ScubaGoggles is an automated tool that assesses how tenant configurations measure against the recommended SCuBA Secure Configuration Baselines, or SCBs, for Google. ScubaGoggles compares tenant configurations to CISA's SCBs and provides detailed reports, reducing the burden on administrators of securing these cloud environments. We will be performing this demonstration on a Windows machine to show you how to download, install, and use ScubaGoggles. First, we will open our browser and navigate to the GitHub repository. Once we've loaded our GitHub repository, we can see all the code. If we scroll down, we find the README section. Here we have the introduction, overview, table of contents, and project license information. To begin the installation process, we will start at the first installation step in the table of contents, which is to install Python on our system. ScubaGoggles requires Python 3.9 or higher. We can check if we already have an appropriate version of Python installed by opening a command prompt and running python -- version. Since we don't already have Python 3 installed, we can click the link here to be directed to the Python website. Under Downloads, select the installer that corresponds to our system, which will be the Windows installer. This downloads an installation package. Double-click it and follow the installation process. On Windows, there is one extra step we need to do to allow us to run Python commands on command prompt, and that is to modify our environment variables. Before we click Install, we will copy down the path to which we are installing Python. Then, we can click Install. Once Python is finished installing, we can search Environment Variables and click Edit the System Environment Variables. Click Environment Variables. Under System Variables, we will select Path and click Edit to modify the system variable. We will click New, and then we will paste in the path that we copied earlier. Click OK to apply the changes. To test that this has been successful, we can open a new command prompt to start a session with our applied changes. Then run python -- version, where we can see it successfully gives our Python version. This next step is optional but highly recommended, and that is to set up a Python virtual environment. On our command prompt, navigate to where you would like to set up your Python virtual environment. For this demonstration, we will use a folder on our desktop called ScubaGoggles. Then run the Windows commands for setting up a Python virtual environment, which is python -mvenv, and then the name of our virtual environment, which is SCuBA-env. After that, we can activate our virtual environment by running SCuBA-env /scripts/activate. Note that we will need to activate our virtual environment each time we start a new session where we will need to run ScubaGoggles. The next step is to download the most up-to-date version of the ScubaGoggles tool. We will follow this link to the latest releases window, where we will download the latest ScubaGoggles WIL file. We can save this wherever we would like, but again, for this demonstration, we will save it to our ScubaGoggles folder. On command prompt, we will navigate to the WIL file that we just downloaded. We will then use pip to install ScubaGoggles by running pip install and then the name of our WIL file. This will install ScubaGoggles and all its dependencies. Now that ScubaGoggles is installed, the next step is to download the OPA executable. Click the link here to continue to those instructions. There are two ways of downloading the OPA executable. The first is to use the ScubaGoggles setup utility. This is the recommended method, as it also sets up the configuration file. If the setup utility cannot be executed for any reason, you can instead download the Open Policy Agent, or OPA, executable manually from the website. To run the setup utility, on our command prompt, we will run ScubaGoggles setup and use the default settings. This may take around 20 seconds to complete. After that is finished, we can move on to setting up our project. The Configuring Defaults page describes how to modify the ScubaGoggles default settings. Since we do not need to do that now, we can skip this page. To create our project, let's navigate to console.cloud.google.com. We will open the navigation menu and go to I am and Admin and click on Create a Project. Enter a project name. Ours will be called ScubaGoggles, and we will use the pre-populated settings for organization and location. Then click Create. Now that our project has been created, we can move on to configuring our authentication method. There are two methods of authentication: Open Authorization, or OAuth, and Service Accounts. For this demonstration, we will show the OAuth method. Going back to our Google Cloud Console, we will open the navigation menu again, go to APIs and Services, and click on OAuth Consent Screen. We will click Get Started and fill in an app name. Ours will be called ScubaGoggles app. We will then select a user support email and specify an audience, which will be internal. Add an email address under Contact Information. Agree to the Google API Services User Data Policy. Click Continue and click Create. On the sidebar, we will click Branding and scroll down to the Authorized Domains section, where we will add the primary domain of our GWS organization. Then click Save. Next, we will open the navigation menu again, go to APIs and Services, and click on Credentials. On the toolbar, we will click the plus button that says Create Credentials and select OAuth Client ID. For application type, we will select Web Application and give it an appropriate name. Ours will be called ScubaGoggles Client. Under Authorized Redirect URIs, we will add two Uniform Resource Identifiers, or URIs. The first one is http://localhost, and the second is http://localhost:8080/. Note that for the second URI, it is important to include that last slash. Go ahead and click Create. After our OAuth client has been created, we will download the JavaScript Object Notation, or JSON, file. We will rename the JSON file Credentials and move it to the location specified in our ScubaGoggles setup utility, which is a folder called ScubaGoggles in our user's home directory. The next step is to set up our enabled API services. We will open the navigation menu again, go to APIs and Services, and click on Enabled APIs and Services. We will click on the plus sign that says Enable APIs and Services. This takes us to the API library, where we will search for and enable three APIs. The first is the Admin Software Development Kit, or SDK API. Click Enable. The second is the Group Settings API. The last is the Cloud Identity API. The last step is to add our OAuth client to the Allow list. Open the navigation menu again, go to APIs and Services, and click on Credentials. Copy the client ID of our newly created OAuth client. Next, we will navigate to admin.google.com. On the sidebar, select Security, Access and Data Control, and click on API Controls. Click on Manage Third-Party App Access. Here, we will click Configure New App and we will paste the client ID that we copied earlier. Then click Search. Select our OAuth application. Click Continue. Select Trusted and click Continue again. Everything looks good, so we can click Finish. Now we should have everything we need to run the ScubaGoggles tool. To test this out, we will go back to our command prompt. We recall that our Python virtual environment is still activated. If it isn't, or if you started a new session, be sure to activate it. Now we will run ScubaGoggles GWS. The first time we run ScubaGoggles, we will need to authenticate with our Google account. Click Allow to give ScubaGoggles permissions to access our Google account. After that, we can close the screen and return to our command prompt. Once ScubaGoggles is finished running, it will automatically pull up our generated report in our browser. Let's take a look at our full report. At a glance, we're able to see all our baselines on the left and which ones have passed, had a warning, failed, or needs a manual check. We're also able to drill into any of these baselines and see which specific policies failed or passed, and why. In a separate rules callout, we can see each rule and whether it is enabled or disabled. There are a lot of options we can use when running ScubaGoggles. However, I want to highlight one other configuration we can use. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this again. What I'd like to show is that you can run an assessment against a subset of baselines. We're going to run this command for only Gmail and Google Calendar, but you can use this command to look at any subset of baselines. You will only see the output for the baselines you've selected. Paste this in, and the command will run again, just like last time. When it's finished, we will see a pop-up of only those two baselines. Running that command will produce an output like this. As you can see, we have the baselines that we specified here on the left, Google Calendar and Gmail, as well as the view of which test passed, had a warning, failed, or needs a manual check. Again, we're able to dive into the specific baseline report and see which baselines passed or failed and why. We can see here in this first baseline that the requirement failed in Workspace. In this case, it means that the requirement has failed in the overall workspace and can be fixed there for baselines 2 through 5. We can see that the requirement has been met not only in the workspace, but in all organizational units where the setting may apply. We can see the agency domains in violation of domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance policy. We can see that this baseline is not able to currently be checked by our tool and must be checked manually. What's different here in baseline 8 is that this icon indicates that there are no relevant events in the current logs for this baseline. That means that a log event may be created if the setting has been changed, but our tool couldn't find any of the logs for the specific event at this time. It is encouraged to manually check this setting to ensure that it's correct. The other reason why a baseline might fail is that it is configured improperly for specific organizational units. In this case, it tells you which requirement failed. And so, this means that it's compliant in the workspace as a whole. but this setting has been configured improperly in 01 and 03. And to pass, the baseline needs to be fixed for those two organizational units. Those are some of the errors you might see when running this tool and what they mean. To learn more about ScubaGoggles, visit www.cisa.gov/scuba or contact Cyber Shared Services at cisa.dhs.gov. GitHub is SCuBA's open source location for all bugs, errors, ideas, features, and enhancements requests.